Tonight, for the first time in American history, both chambers of Congress voted to tell a sitting president to stop his war. The Senate passed a war powers resolution 50-48. And before the ink was even dry, Iran's own negotiators in Switzerland turned to the American delegation and asked, what does that mean for us? Trump exploded on Truth Social, called 4 members of his own party losers, accused Congress of giving aid and comfort to the enemy, and then spent Wednesday forcing those same senators to reverse their votes one by one, and Iran watched every single second of it. Let me take you inside what happened, because tonight the story is not just about a vote. It is about what that vote revealed about this war, this president, this Congress, and the fragile peace process that the entire world is now depending on. Tuesday afternoon, the United States Senate voted 50-48 to pass a war powers resolution directing President Trump to remove American military forces from hostilities with Iran unless he receives an explicit declaration of war or a congressional authorization for the use of military force. That vote was historic. In the entire history of the War Powers Resolution passed in 1973, in the wake of Vietnam, specifically to prevent any single president from taking the country to war without Congress, the Senate had tried 9 previous times to pass such a measure and failed every single time. Tuesday was the 10th attempt, and for the first time, it passed. 4 Republican senators broke from their own party to make it happen. Rand Paul of Kentucky, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. They joined nearly every Democrat in the chamber with one notable exception. Democratic Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania voted against the resolution. The final count was 50-48. Now, here's where you need to understand what this vote actually means in practical terms, because there has been a lot of confusion about this, and I want to be precise with you. A concurrent resolution does not go to the president's desk. The president does not sign it or veto it. It does not carry the full force of law in the same way a statute does. The White House dismissed it immediately, saying the resolution has no significance, and calling its passage the result of Republican absences. 2 Republican senators, Mitch McConnell and Dave McCormick, who had previously voted against war powers measures, were absent from Tuesday's vote. Without those absences, the resolution likely would have failed, as it had 9 times before. But here is what does matter about this vote, and why every American watching this channel should understand its significance, even if the lawyers argue about its legal force. This was the first time in this entire war that both the House and the Senate, the full United States Congress, put on record that this war was launched without their authorization and that they want it stopped. The House voted 215-208 earlier this month. The Senate voted 50-48 on Tuesday. Together, those 2 votes represent the collective voice of the American people's elected representatives, saying to the most powerful person on earth, you started this war without asking us, and we want it ended. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer captured the weight of the moment directly. He said today Congress stood up to Donald Trump and voted to end his costly, unnecessary, and devastating war with Iran. He called it a historic blunder that will go down in the history books as one of the worst foreign policy forays America has ever made. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, who has led the push for war powers votes since this conflict began, said the most solemn power for Congress is the power to declare war, not the president, and that the founders understood the stakes and consequences of war were so vast that a decision about war should never be in the hands of a single person. Now, let me tell you exactly what Trump did after the vote, because his reaction is in many ways the most revealing part of this entire story. Within hours of the Senate vote, Trump posted on Truth Social. He called the 4 Republican senators who voted with Democrats, and I want to read you his exact words, 4 Republican losers who voted with the Democrats. He said, Iran asked my people, what does that all mean? He accused Congress of providing aid and comfort to the enemy. He said, those senators have just made my job more difficult. And then he added what he always adds, but I will get it done one way or the other, because I always get it done. Read that post again and notice one specific sentence. Iran asked my people, what does that all mean? Trump himself confirmed publicly on his own platform that Iran's negotiating team in Switzerland went directly to the American delegation and asked what the Senate vote meant for the peace process. In the middle of the most delicate diplomatic negotiations this country has conducted in a generation, while American and Iranian diplomats were sitting across from each other in a Swiss mountain resort trying to prevent a resumption of war, the United States Senate voted to end the war. And Iran immediately wanted to know if that changed America's negotiating position. The Senate vote did not stay in Washington. It landed in the room in Switzerland within hours. Senator Cassidy gave the most honest and direct explanation for why he voted for the resolution. He said, and these are his words, "You have not told the American people what is going on. It was supposed to last 4 weeks. It has lasted 4 months. Our original objectives have not been achieved, and I want to know what is going on." Think about what that statement means coming from a sitting Republican senator. A senator from Trump's own party in a Republican-controlled Senate stood up and told the President of the United States that the war he launched, the war that cost over $200 billion by some estimates and killed thousands of people, did not achieve its original objectives, and that Congress has not been told the truth about what is happening. But here is where this story takes a turn that tells you everything about how power actually works in Washington right now. The day after the Senate voted to end Trump's war, Wednesday, the Senate walked it back. Trump held a lunch with Republican senators on Wednesday and reportedly confronted them directly. By Wednesday evening, Rand Paul, who had been one of the 4 Republicans to vote for the resolution on Tuesday, changed his vote to present. Bill Cassidy, who had been one of the 4 Republicans and who gave that remarkable speech about unanswered questions and unachieved objectives, changed his vote to against. The Senate rejected an attempt to advance a similar measure on Wednesday night. The reversal was stunning. Within 24 hours, 2 of the 4 Republican senators who had stood on principle had reversed course after a direct confrontation with the president. Cassidy offered an explanation. He said he had received a thorough briefing from Vice President Vance and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff on the Iran situation. He said he wanted to thank Vice President Vance and Special Envoy Witkoff for the thorough briefing this afternoon on Iran. He said he now had confidence in the administration's strategy. The briefing that Cassidy said he needed, the information that convinced him to reverse his vote, was information that he said on Tuesday had not been provided to the American people. He voted to end the war because he had not been briefed. He reversed his vote because he was briefed in private. The American people still do not know what was in that briefing. Trump welcomed Wednesday's reversal on Truth Social. He wrote that the vote puts Iran on notice. Now I want to step back from the political drama of the last 48 hours and tell you why this matters beyond Washington. Because the real question here is not whether the War Powers Resolution has the force of law. It is not whether Cassidy or Paul reversed their votes under political pressure. The real question is the one that Senator Cassidy asked out loud on Tuesday before he was briefed and before he reversed himself. Were the original objectives of this war achieved? The United States launched Operation Epic Fury on February 28th with a stated purpose: stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. The war lasted nearly 4 months. More than 4,000 Lebanese civilians were killed. Dozens of American service members were wounded. Iran struck civilian airports, fired missiles at American bases, shut down the Strait of Hormuz for months, and triggered a global fuel crisis. Gas prices in America hit $4.56 at their peak. The Pentagon officially says the war cost $29 billion. Independent analysts put the real cost closer to $200 billion. And what does America have to show for it? The Memorandum of Understanding signed by Trump and Iran's president on June 17th does not require Iran to dismantle its nuclear program. It requires Iran to allow IAEA inspectors in, though Iran disputes even that. The nuclear issue is explicitly left to 60 days of follow-on talks, with no guarantee those talks produce an agreement. Iran's parliament still has a law on the books restricting IAEA access. Iran's ballistic missiles, which Vance himself defended Iran keeping, remain in Iran's possession. And Iran's foreign ministry has publicly declared that the Strait of Hormuz will never return to its pre-war conditions, and that Iran retains the right to charge fees for passage through its territorial waters. That is the situation Congress was reacting to on Tuesday. That is what Cassidy meant when he said the original objectives have not been achieved. And that is what Iran is watching every single day as it sits across the table from American diplomats in Switzerland and watches the most powerful legislative body in the world argue about whether the war their country just survived was even legal. The peace talks continue. Technical negotiations are ongoing in Switzerland. Secretary of State Rubio is traveling to Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain to brief Gulf allies and get their support for the broader framework. The IAEA's Director General has said the Memorandum of Understanding explicitly calls for nuclear inspections, though Iran says those inspections will only happen after a final deal is reached. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has rejected a new alternative shipping lane through the strait proposed by the United States, warning any vessel that tries to use it will be in danger. And the fighting in Lebanon, despite multiple ceasefire announcements, has not stopped. Israel has continued striking Hezbollah targets. Hezbollah has continued firing rockets at Israeli troops. The deconfliction cell established in Switzerland to manage Lebanon will face its first real test in the coming days. America, here is what the last 48 hours in Washington actually showed you. The Senate voted to end the war. Trump called his own party members losers. Iran stopped the negotiations to ask what it meant. 2 senators reversed their votes after a private briefing the American people still have not seen. And the Pentagon says the war cost $29 billion, while independent analysts say the real number is closer to $200 billion. Here is my question for you tonight. When your own senators reverse their votes after a private briefing and still cannot tell you what they were told, do you believe the American people are getting the full truth about this war? And if the original objectives were not achieved, what exactly did this war accomplish? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the negotiations continue tomorrow, and we will be here the moment anything breaks.